How's it going, everyone? It's Milwaukee coming back at you once again, and today we're going to be discussing Superman. What price tomorrow? Let's get into it. It's a new era for the Daily Planet with the launch of the PGN News Network. But there's no time for celebrations as Superman is battling a monster made of fire. Then, Superman ends up battling a monster that's invisible to him, but not the rest of the populace. We get informed that Superman had been away from Metropolis for a while, and he's just now back on the scene. And Clark learns that Lois Lane is dating a guy named Jonathan Carroll. Clark's crushed. General Lane blames Superman for all the attacks on Metropolis by these invading aliens. After this, an ice monster attacks Metropolis, and Superman, of course, goes to the rescue. Then, all three of these previous aliens that Superman has fought, they come back to Metropolis together, and they all take on Superman at once. How could Superman overcome these odds? What role does Supergirl play in all of this? And how will the story, pan out? Well, you're just going to have to read to figure that one out. Some of the things that I enjoyed about the volume were the portrayals of Lois Lane and Jimmy Olsen and the new character Miko. The story is presented very much like through the eyes of the camera. Like we're seeing Superman, fight these monsters, and it's constantly being narrated by someone like a newscaster, or there's even a part where Clark Kent writes a news article about his own battle as Superman, against the alien. But of course, he doesn't reveal he's Superman. So we're always sort of seeing these events through the eyes of other people, and they're sort of explaining what's happening as it's all going down. And I was curious, with this new 52 era of Superman, how are they going to handle Lois? She's no longer married to Superman. We see here that she's dating this random guy. Clark, he has a love interest as well. Heather Kelly, another news broadcaster. So that was what I was most interested in. I didn't even mind if the villains were weak in this volume, because I was more invested in the people from the Daily Planet. How the changes in the New 52, how that was going to affect the book. I was pleasantly surprised. Lois, she got a new job as the head of the news agency, so she's always calling the shots and getting the people in place. Jimmy Olsen and Miko, they're on the ground in the news van, or they're in the air in the news helicopter. Capturing the footage. So it was interesting to see these new dynamics. I was surprised here in the final issue, Dan Jurgens gets a writing credit, and I knew Dan was coming in for Volume 2 of Superman, but I didn't know he was going to be here. I thought this was going to be all George Perez. But in the final issue, Dan Jurgens is here. And I don't know if he gets the credit for this 11th hour Hail Mary to explain the villains. Because the whole time you're reading the book, Superman's fighting these villains. You don't really know why. You don't know who they are. You just know that they speak this alien language that only Superman can understand, the one word, Krypton. And here, Dan Jurgens comes in, I guess, maybe. Or maybe it was always George Perez. But he comes up with an explanation for the aliens, how they're actually, nanomachines that were in one of the Collector of Worlds bottled cities that escaped during, Superman's fight with the Collector of Worlds / Brainiac back in Grant Morrison's Action Comics run, that they attached themselves to Superman's suit, that he brought them down into Metropolis. And there's a whole explanation for it. I feel like it really saved the book, because otherwise it was just what is going on? Directionless. And I want to say it was Dan Jurgens, but I said I could be wrong. But he came in, he tied it all together, gave us a satisfactory conclusion to the story, and it was one I didn't see coming, so I enjoyed it. Now, I know at this time there was some confusion as to what was going on with Grant Morrison and his run, because he was keeping his cards, close to his chest. He wasn't telling anybody what he was doing, so that caused George Perez some frustration. And there's even a part of this book where the newscasters are talking about Grant Morrison's run and the Collector of Worlds storyline. He says there's still some confusion to how that all ended, even to this day, right? there were some of the creators, expressing their frustration, and I guess they really wanted to tie this volume into Grant's work, and they ultimately do with the whole nanomachine thing. But as you can see, this book is known for sort of being like a creative mess. Not that the creatives were at fault. George Perez, he's top tier. Uh, Jesus Moreno on art. I enjoyed his art. A little bit muddy to me. I prefer, Nicola Scott, who did some fill-ins here and really finished out the volume. I'm a big fan of hers from, back pre-New 52. And you get Dan Jurgens comes in here, puts a bow on it, and we got ourselves a pretty enjoyable volume. As for some things I didn't really care about for the volume, a lot of references in this book, a lot of not really tie-ins, but sort of mentions or whatever. There's a scene here where there's this alien who's on the top of a mountain, and he hits a musical instrument or whatever and summons something, and they're for more on this, check out Stormwatch #1. And there's stuff with a Superboy. They're check out Superboy #6 or Supergirl issue 6 and 7. A lot of stuff like that. It's not true tie-ins, but they're if you want to know what's going on, you got to read these other issues. And I wasn't expecting that here in Superman Volume 1. And it didn't take away per se, but it was just come on, already this is the first volume. And I understand they got to sell books, but it was something that I noticed, and I was one I could put up with, but now they're just coming left, right, and center, just Also, the way the book was written with the constant narration from TV talking heads or stuff happening after the fact. It never really felt like we were in the moment, even though we were. We got a lot of small panels here, a lot of words, small panels. George Perez was using up every bit of real estate he had on the page to tell the story, which is not necessarily a bad thing. It's just those first few issues where Superman is fighting these random villains. You don't know where it's going. You're come on. But like I said, it all gets tied together at the end. But I don't know. It just the presentation felt off to me. Maybe I'm smoking crack. I don't know. So overall, I found the volume to be, mostly enjoyable. I'm going to go ahead and give Superman What Price Tomorrow a 3 out of 5. It's not the best Superman book I've ever read. It's not the worst. But when you consider the creative struggles going on here, it's better than, it should have been. Consider. So yeah, until next time, I'll see you there.